Assalamu alaikum dear students. So today we will study how the modification of saliva takes place in the ductal system. So the objective of today's lecture is to elaborate the modification of saliva in the ductal systems of in the ductal system of salivary glands, right? The ductal system of the salivary glands, they are basically the passage for the salivary fluid to flow, and they undergo modification through these ductal system. The ductal system, basically they are different ducts, the intralobular and the lobular ducts you have studied. The intralobular are those one which are present within the lobules. These intercalated and the striated ducts are an example of intralobular ducts. ठीक है? And the excretory duct is an example of interlobular ducts. ठीक है? And these ducts serves as passageway for the flow of saliva, and they undergo modification. The hypotonic saliva, which is the isotonic saliva is converted to the hypotonic saliva थ्रू इन दीज डक्ट्स. ठीक है? या जो इसकी जो सॉल्यूट की कंसंट्रेशन जब यहाँ पर ये रिलीज होते हैं सोडियम एंड क्लोराइड की, वो ज़्यादा होती है, और फिर जब ऐसा ऐसा रीअब्जॉर्प्शन उनकी होती है थ्रू दीज डक्ट्स, स्ट्राइएटेड डक्ट्स में रीअब्जॉर्प्शन जैसे मैंने पहले भी बताया था, और उसके बाद रीअब्जॉर्प्शन के बाद जब एक्सक्रीटरी डक्ट से होकर ओरल कैविटी में जाता है वो सलाइवा, तो वो हाइपोटोनिक हो चुका होता है. ठीक है? And these all ducts are surrounded by the connective tissue. कनेक्टिव टिश्यू से इसको सराउंड किया होता है. ये एसिनस ऑलरेडी मैंने आपको बताया. इसके ऊपर मायोएपिथेलियल सेल्स प्रेजेंट होते हैं जो कि सेक्रीशन करते हैं सलाइवा की. Each duct of this ductal system is lined by a different type of epithelial cells, और उसकी शेप डिफरेंट होती है. जैसे कि इंटरकलेटेड में क्यूबॉइडल सेल्स हैं, स्ट्राइएटेड में स्ट्राइएटेड सेल्स प्रेजेंट होते हैं, इनफोल्डिंग्स उसमें हुई होती हैं. पायरामिडल जो इसका एसएनएस होता है, सेक्रेटरी एसएनएस, उसमें पायरामिडल शेप के सेल्स होते हैं. जो सिरस है वो हाईली ज़्यादा हाईली पायरामिडल होते हैं, और जो म्यूकस सेल्स हैं वो लो पायरामिडल सेल्स होते हैं. ठीक है? सो there are different cells present in each type of duct, right? So the intercalated ducts, as I have shown you in the last figure, they are low cuboidal cells and are connected with the secretory end pieces. These cells are basically they cannot be identified in the light microscope, as they are compressed between the secretory SNS, and they are while in electron microscope they can be identified as they have the characteristics of just like that serous cells, and they have rough endoplasmic reticulum in the basal cytoplasm, and the Golgi apparatus is apically present, and they serve as the first passage for the saliva, and it contains the saliva as it is secreted. They are isotonic. The electrolytes concentration is higher at that time, and they modify the saliva by the action of lysozyme and lactoferrin. The lactoferrin and lysozyme, they are basically, lysozyme, as you know, they have a lysosomal activity, and the lactoferrin are basically bactericidal, which especially in the saliva for Streptococcus mutans, they decrease the growth, bacterial growth, and some other enzymes are also present, and the modification of saliva starts in the intercalated ducts. The intercalated ducts are the house for the undifferentiated mesenchymal cells, and they replace the dying cells in the excretory and the striated ducts, जहाँ पर भी जो सेल्स की डेथ होती है या फिर वो शेड ऑफ कर जाते हैं, तो यहाँ से अनडिफ्रेंशिएटेड सेल्स जाकर डिफ्रेंशिएट होते हैं और वहाँ वो उन सेल्स को रिप्लेस कर देते हैं. ठीक है. सो दिस वाज अबाउट द इंटरकलेटेड डक्ट्स. The intercalated duct, which are low cuboidal cells, and they are contains the granules, and they have enzymatic activity, and they are house of undifferentiated cells, right? Now the saliva is pushed towards the striated ducts. Striated ducts, they contribute almost the largest portion of the ductal system in the salivary glands, and they receive the primary saliva from the intercalated duct, and they are the cells of the striated duct are columnar होते हैं और उसमें इनफोल्डिंग्स होती हैं. प्लाज्मा मेम्ब्रेन में जो है नीचे इनफोल्डिंग्स होती हैं जिसमें mitochondria present होते हैं. These cells of the striated ducts are columnar, they are rich in mitochondria, and the modification of the primary saliva, the reabsorption and the secretion of electrolytes takes place. There is reabsorption of sodium and chlorine and secretion of potassium and bicarbonate into the fluid. They are the intralobular component, as I have told you before. There are two striated ducts and the intercalated duct. They contribute to the intralobular component of the salivary gland, and the excretory duct. Sorry, the excretory duct is the interlobular component. ठीक है. And they are covered by the connective tissue. The myoepithelial cells are covering the intercalated ducts and all the acinar cells, and their contractile property pushes the saliva forward into these ducts, and they are partitioned between the enfoldings of the plasma membrane, abundant in mitochondria present in it. The mitochondria are present between these foldings, and you can see here, these are the enfoldings which are present in the cells of striated duct, and here this is the striations, right? And there is lots of mitochondria present over here. If you open your organs, I didn't find it in the net, you can see the mitochondria which is abundant in these enfoldings, right? And there is secretion of potassium and bicarbonate ions, and reabsorption of सोडियम एंड क्लोराइड आयंस. ठीक है. और जो हमारे पास एसिनर सेल्स होते हैं, जो सेक्रेटरी यूनिट है, वहाँ पर इंटरस्टिशियल टिश्यू से और कनेक्टिव जो ब्लड होता है, ब्लड से जो है वो सोडियम और क्लोराइड आयंस रीएब्जॉर्ब करते हैं स्टार्टिंग इन द सेक्रेटरी एंड पीस. वहाँ पर फिर वो आइसोटोनिक होता है सलाइवा, उसमें सोडियम और क्लोराइड की सेक्रेशन ज़्यादा की कंसंट्रेशन ज़्यादा होती है. फिर जब वो इस striated duct से गुजरता है तो reabsorption हो जाती है, and the saliva is converted into hypotonic fluid. There is a lot of energy required for the reabsorption and the secretion of the ions. Therefore, they contribute to the largest portion, and the mitochondria present in it provide the energy for the reabsorption and secretion of electrolytes. These cells also secrete the proteins like callicarin, and the epidermal growth factor is produced by these cells, and they also are capable of absorbing proteins, which is visible because of the presence of vesicles in it, and they absorb these proteins by the process of endocytosis. This slide also shows the mechanism of the salivary secretion, in which there is initially the hypotonic saliva, which absorb the sodium and chloride ions. The solution is isotonic, then they pass towards this These are the myoepithelial cells which takes part in the movements of the saliva, and they provide protection to these cells, and they then push this fluid into the intercalated and to the striated ducts. Here the reabsorption and secretion of oins takes place, and they also there is a reabsorption of proteins also takes place. This portion, the striated portion of the ducts are impermeable to water. They are supposed to be impermeable to water, and they do not secrete water at this stage. But they synthesizes the proteins which is secreted into the salivary fluid. The cytokeratin filament 1818 is also present in the cells of striated ducts, right? So this was about the striated ducts. The main modification of the saliva takes place in the striated duct. Okay, the striated duct join with each other and they form a larger duct known as the excretory duct. The excretory duct then they gradually increase in the size and are surrounded by the increasing layer of the connective tissue. Progressively along the path, it then becomes the cells lost its striations and they become non-striated. The two-layered, the excretory layer is two-layered. The mucosal epithelial layer, the inner mucosal epithelial layer, and the outer connective tissue layer. The mucosal layer is composed of pseudostratified epithelium. The cells are columnar and they become pseudostratified, and occasionally you will found the goblet cells in it. Have you studied it in your you must have studied it in your in your histology. The cells then undergoes The cells then undergoes transition of columnar cells to cuboidal cells, and they become stratified. Finally, when it opens into the oral cavity, the connective tissue has got collagen and elastic fibers. Collagen fibers होते हैं और elastic fibers होते हैं, which allow the stretching of this excretory duct. The collagen elastic fibers allow the accumulation of salivary fluids, accumulation of salivary fluids in it, और elasticity इसको maintain रखती है कि अगर volume ज़्यादा हो जाए, shrink हो जाए या expand हो जाए, right? So this is a collective diagram of the different ductal system. Here we can see the starting from the SNS, from where the primary saliva is secreted, and they get the electrolytes from the connective tissue, the blood supply from the connective tissue, and the sodium and chloride ions enters into these cells, and the plasma cells also transport the immunoglobulins in the connective tissue. The plasma cells transport the immunoglobulins by the process of transcytosis, and here the primary saliva is produced and they then travel through the intercalated ducts, which is cuboidal cells. फिर उसके बाद जाते हैं striated ducts में जहाँ पर columnar striated cells present. Here you can see the mitochondria, right? And after that they join together and they form a larger duct, excretory duct, where there's a transition of cells between the shape of the cells takes place, and finally the cells become stratified squamous in the excretory duct and it opens into the oral cavity. The reabsorption of ions takes place and the fluid is converted from the isotonic to the hypertonic solution, right? Understand? And this is how the saliva is excreted into the oral cavity. So thank you all. So this was about the modification of the saliva. Now the assignment time. The assignment is only one question of 5 marks, and you have to write about the mechanism in the modification of saliva that takes place in the striated duct, right? You have to write only the mechanism that takes place in the striated duct, right? And submit it. I will post the assignment in the classroom, right? Thank you.